Welcome back to the No Stopping Kev show. Guys, I got a very special guest today. My boy, almost like a brother to me, but Antione Joseph is here. Antoine, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
So people are probably wondering, like, who is this guy? Well, I also get asked a lot about how did I get involved in real estate. And a lot of times people are like, yo, Kev, like that's great. It's great that you're doing that. This, that, and the third. How'd you get started? And I'm always like, listen, I can't really take the credit for this because if it wasn't for Antoine, I would have been throwing money down the drain just like every other kid out of college. And so Antoine really was just like, no, you're not doing it. This is what you need to do. And, I had to get my Joel Embiid on and trust the process. So Antoine, first and foremost, thank you for that. I feel like I always thank you periodically just for your guidance in my life. But I appreciate that a ton.
You're welcome.
I want to hear your perspective on what made you kind of get involved in real estate and then ultimately how you ended up pushing me down that track because I almost didn't see it coming.
So for me, it started a long time before me. My grandfather came here from Haiti and he worked as he had his own real estate brokerage in New York, in Queens, New York in the 60s. So real estate, and we actually just found out, my dad just found out maybe a few years ago that my grandfather's dad, so my great grandfather, bought land in Haiti.
Word?
So yeah, I found that out like less than a year ago. He would buy land in Haiti, grow tobacco on it, and then sail over to Cuba and sell his tobacco in Cuba.
Oh my God! Like,
yeah, so it goes back pretty far in my family. But my specifically how I got started was when I graduated college. I got a job out in Connecticut. I was living in Connecticut. That was my first job, and that was in 2008 when the recession first started. Right, So I lost my job in Connecticut in about a year's time, and when I came back home to work, my dad said, "All right, well now you're home. No more renting. You're gonna live in my house until you can afford a place on your own." So I had been living in college for 4 years, and then 1 year on my own. I was not trying to live at home, so I knew the most economical way. And my dad kind of put this idea in my head too, like if you can just buy your house and rent half of it out. So that's what I did. I looked for the first duplex I could find. I was paying $1,400 mortgage and charging my tenant $750. So I was paying $650 to live.
That's lit, man.
That's how it started. I was 23 and had my own house, all because my dad said I couldn't rent.
Yo, and I mean, now you probably feel even more inspired just knowing that your great grandfather was out here making moves, like taking the tobacco from Haiti over to Cuba. Like you probably feel like, yo, I gotta do more now. Like you was already out here making moves, but I could only imagine hearing that. It's just like, you know what, this in my blood. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's how I feel. It's empowering.
So let me tell y'all something. This man, Antoine, also used to be my basketball coach. 3 years as an assistant, 1 year as the head coach. But freshman year of high school, this dude used to just be on the sideline the first couple days of tryouts. He had on our high school shirt, but we all thought he was a student at our school just because, like, he probably still can't tell how old you are looking at you. But he had a baby face, and one day I feel like we all just was like, yo, like, are you not going to play? And you were like, oh, I'm coaching. And we were like, oh, all right, cool. Then fast forward, eventually we go by your spot. And we're just like, yeah, you rent this? Or, like, no, I own it. I'm just like, word? Like, one place was in South Philly where we grew up. New, very modern. We just like, yo, this is dope. And then when you told us, like, yeah, I got 2 units, this one is mine, and I got a tenant downstairs. We was like, what you mean you got a tenant downstairs? You're like, I charge somebody rent. And it's just like, wait, they paying you to live in your spot and you live here and they pay your mortgage and you're like, yeah. So mind you, I'm like 14 and I'm just like that sounds like a good plan. Like, how do you do that? And then fast forward to me being at Penn, I remember one specific night I was getting pretty close to graduating. So it was definitely like that spring. And I was like, yo, Twan, how much is a good deal on an apartment? Like, how much should I be spending a month? Do you remember what you responded? You probably take a
Nothing.
guess. Yeah, right. Like nothing. It's like you going home to your mom's house. And I was like, no, man, I'm not trying to do that. I was living at home. I was living on my own basically for 4 years. Like, I'm not going back under mom's roof. No way. And then you was just like, you going back. And I was like, what do you mean? And then you reminded me later, you was like, no, we had this conversation years ago. You told me this is what you wanted to do. This is how you do it. So I would imagine when you had to move back from Connecticut, were you excited about going back to live with your pops?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I feel like no. After you live on your own for 4 years doing your thing, you don't want to go back. You don't, because you got to respect the rules. You just, you got to go back to being a kid a little bit.
Even if you got the coolest parents in the world, they're still gonna be like, wait a minute. They're gonna ask you questions. Yeah. It's just like it's not something you want to deal with.
Yeah, you don't want to be in that spot. You don't want to be in that spot. So you weather the storm for a little bit. But I can say in hindsight, best decision I've ever made. Something that a lot of people, I feel like they have this question is, do you need your real estate license to buy property?
No, you don't. And I have my real estate license. And I got my real estate license around the same year that I bought my house. I got my real estate license thinking that, you know what, if I want to be a real estate investor, the first thing I got to do is get a license to do it, right? And that's just false. You get your real estate license in order to represent other people in real estate transactions. But if you want to buy real estate for yourself, you do not need a license.
Do you recommend people get their license, even if they don't want to represent people?
That's a personal decision. It basically depends on how you intend to use it. So I liked having it because I have access to the MLS, which is the database of all the houses that are available at that time and all the houses that have sold. It's basically just where all the real estate transactions get recorded. And in order to get that access, you need your license. So I liked having my license even after I realized I didn't need it to invest in real estate. And I went years without doing a transaction. Your house was my first transaction.
You're welcome. But yeah,
but see, the thing with having your license is once you have your license, you can't really practice real estate until you find somewhere to hang your license. And hanging your license basically means you have to be sponsored by a broker. So, and if you don't know what a broker is, it's like all those signs that you see on for sale signs, those are brokerage signs. So those are all companies that hire real estate agents. And depending on what company you sign with and what rules that company has, having your license can be great or having your license can be a pain. The guy I hang my license with, he's a one-man show. Before me, he had nobody working for him, and I just met him because he sold me my first house. He was an agent showing another house that I decided not to buy, but in talking with him, I liked him, and I told him, look, when I do buy a house, I'm gonna have you represent me from the buyer side. And just from then, I told him about my situation. I had a license, but I didn't really have anywhere to hang it. He was like, I knew he had his brokerage, so he's just told me I could come on. I told him I was only part-time, so he said, yeah, just do your thing. Whenever you bring a transaction, fine, but I'm not gonna hold you to any quotas. I'm not gonna make you come in the office or anything. Basically gave me my freedom to do what I want.
That's the way to have it if you're trying to do it on the side. Because if you sign with some of the bigger companies who you see signs all throughout the city, you usually gotta be in the office a set amount of hours. You got to sell a
Yep.
certain number of houses. And
Yep.
then I feel like they probably take a bigger percentage of what, some other people may take.
Yeah,
But that
exactly.
probably varies too.
Yeah, it's all varied, and it's all depends on what you're comfortable with. If you're really trying to push out a ton of houses, and that's what you're trying to do all day, maybe you go with a bigger company because they have the name recognition.
Right.
But for me, that wasn't my thing. And if I had to do that, I probably would let my license lapse, and just continue being an investor without it.
Gotcha. So I want to dive into the investment side, and we can both share. But I want to hear, like, what was kind of your strategy in picking the duplex that you ultimately picked?
That was the first thing I saw. I had no strategy. In hindsight, I had no strategy. It ended up working out just because I trusted him. And the guy who sold it to me was a friend of my dad's. So he wasn't going to set me up. So I kind of just rolled with whatever he said. Being 22, 23, I didn't really know what to look for. But in hindsight, the way you said the house was all renovated and fixed up, it was like very nice. From an investment standpoint, I wouldn't do that again. I wouldn't buy a house that was fixed up and nice already, because then all those amenities that you see that make people feel good, you pay for that when you're buying.
Double, probably.
You pay double. It's better to buy something that's not as nice, and then you do the fixing on your own dime, and then charge somebody else for after your work. That's where the real money gets made. But for me, it worked out because I was still paying a cheap mortgage, and I wasn't as investment savvy. I just knew I wanted to get something I could afford and could own later.
Mm-hmm. So how much did you pay? How much is it worth now? What was the neighborhood like back then? Can you walk us through that?
So I bought it for $199. I'd say it'll probably get appraised around $300 now. The neighborhood back then, the neighborhood was South Philly. If you don't know South Philly, it was the semi-hood, I guess I would say. Like,
yeah, because it's right there on that like border-ish of,
exactly.
Once you cross.
If I was a block and a half over, it could have been rough.
Yeah.
But sometimes the stuff that happens a block and a half over spills over to your block, so you get some crime and police activity. But overall, it wasn't terrible. I wasn't afraid for my life living there. And the neighborhood now, it's just getting bought up.
Yeah, you're definitely not afraid for your life.
No, definitely not. A lot of ladies jogging at night that wouldn't have been around.
A lot more dogs of various breeds.
Yeah, a lot more dogs. New construction going up everywhere. So I lucked out because I didn't see that happening. I didn't see that happening when I bought it.
Right across from you used to be a vacant lot.
Well, actually, when you knew me, it was a vacant lot. When I bought it, it was an apartment building, a 26-unit apartment building.
Really?
Yeah. Yes.
Was it pretty rundown, I'm assuming?
No. It was. I mean, it was just an apartment building.
Just
like
average.
People running in and out. Yeah. I didn't really get to know the neighbors, but I recognized. I would say it was 26 units. I probably recognized maybe 30 people that lived just from seeing them go in and out from across the street. And then, like 9 months into living there, my block is on the news. It's like the 12 o'clock news, and it's like 5-alarm fire.
Man.
On 4th Street. I was like, wait, that building looks like the building. Wait, that's like, my house.
I'm on 4th Street.
Long story short, it was actually a meth lab that exploded and burnt the entire building down to the ground. My clothes smelled like smoke for a week from being across the street.
Oh my God.
So like 2 weeks later, there's a big demo crew taking all the wreckage out and just clearing it out. And then it was an empty lot. for like 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah, because I think probably I bought my house in 2018, so probably around that time I was riding through, and I was like, "Wait, that's Twan's spot right there." I was like, "What's different about this street?" And now it's like a 3 or 4 story building with like what 3 houses are maybe there right now. I don't even know if they're apartments or what, but
It's 4 separate houses. They face opposite, and they got a shared driveway where, like, right in front of my house, you make a left into the shared driveway, and all 4 of them have garages. And if anyone knows South Philly, having a garage in South Philly,
yeah, that's a big deal. Like,
big major deal, because
yeah,
I had to park around the corner many times.
and walk and like might forget where you parked.
Right.
Like I've done it a couple times.
Or park at the school down the street and have to wake up at
Yep.
6:15 to make sure you don't get towed.
Right. Oh man. But yeah, so like I guess you helped me learn what to do and what not to do. So, fast forward to 2018 after I had lived at home for a minute. When we were looking for houses, I feel like we came up with more of a strategy on where I should look, because it's that balance between you want something that's decent that you can rent out, generate good cash flow, but then you don't want something that necessarily, like you said, someone put a ton of work into, because then you're overpaying. It's going to be hard to get that bang for your buck. It's going to be hard to get that return. So we kind of, I guess at the time that I was buying and the time you were buying, South Philly was different. There's been in recent years, I can tell you from the time I was in college to when I graduated, my neighborhood began to look significantly different. Like each time I would come home for Thanksgiving, Christmas, spring break, summer break, there were always like new houses being built. And I'm not just talking about 1 or 2, I'm talking about like blocks being redone to the point where I can't even tell you, like Christian Street, where all those new houses are, I can't even tell you what that block used to look like before I went to college, right?
Right.
And I watched them build it.
Right.
So there's like so many streets in my neighborhood where I just can't remember at all what it used to look like, even though I used to pass by these streets every day of my life on my way to and from school and things like that. So, I knew right where I grew up, probably be a little bit pricey, but I also realized I'm like, hey, over time, people begin building more and more and further out in the neighborhood. So like when I left for college, all the development probably was at like probably south to like, let's call it Carpenter-ish, like that area was hot.
All right, yeah.
And then, I get in my sophomore, junior year, and next thing you know, like I was from Philly, my freshman year roommate was from Chicago, so we used to talk about like whose neighborhood was more hood, right?
Oh,
and,
God.
And some of it we used to just like,
make up stuff.
Yeah, we had some hyperbole just because people, they had no clue. I brought him home with me for Thanksgiving, right? And we're walking, and he's like, yeah, you got a white lady walking a dog. Like what is this? And I was just like, bro, it wasn't like that when we met. Like this is new.
This is new.
Yeah, this is unusual. But so I knew that eventually, I felt like I just wanted to be on kind of the outskirts of the development. That way, 5, maybe 10, if I'm unlucky, they'll start building near the house that I bought. I can tell you after 2 years of living there, it's there. Right around the corner from me, I got those houses that's across from you, minus the garage, but they're selling for like $350, $400, which only ends up helping the value of my house. So for someone starting to look for a house, what are some things they need to know about? Like how many houses should they look at? A lot of people have questions about like pre-approval letters and what exactly that means and what goes into that. Can you walk us through at least those 2 elements?
Okay, so for about where you're looking, just like you said, you want to kind of be on the outskirts of where everything is happening. But one thing that we made sure of, that I don't remember if you knew that if you remember doing this, but I told you So we can't really predict the future. We can make an educated guess on where the development is going, but you want to make sure you buy a house that is a solid investment now. And if the development does come, that's like gravy.
I remember us talking about that.
Yeah. So we made sure that once you did pick when we saw that strategically it looked like the development was coming, and we were right, luckily. But the market could have done something completely different because you can't control that. And you want to make sure that your mortgage price and your projected rents, the rents that are average for the neighborhood, are still going to make sense, even if your house stays at the exact same value it is now for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's first off. That's what you want to look for. You want to make sure the numbers are working for you, and then try and kind of get that gravy just by being educated about what's going on. As for a pre-approval letter, that's basically the first thing you're going to need when you're looking for a house. So a pre-approval letter is a letter from a lender, aka a bank. Those are the people who are going to supply you your mortgage, that run your credit. They look at your tax returns. They look at your paycheck stubs, and they kind of try and get a glimpse of who you are financially, and then they'll take a chance to say, okay, we'll sign off on saying we will lend this person X amount of money. So without the pre-approval letter, you have no idea how much money you can spend on your house. So once the bank runs all your information, you get that pre-approval letter. Now you kind of have a ballpark of where you want to start looking price-wise. And then once you have your budget, now you put that together with where you want to be at, what neighborhood you want to be, and where do you think makes sense. And you put the two together, and you got to find a house that fits both your budget and your plan for the investment.
I feel like I got my pre-approval letter a little late. Like, I feel like I didn't get it until we found the house. And I guess it's because part of it was, but I graduated in 2017. We started looking for houses in 2017, even though we knew I wouldn't be able to buy, most likely. From my memory, the reason we did that is because you were like, listen, you're going to go see everything that's out there. That way, you're going to know exactly what you're looking for. And I feel like that's a good way to go about it, because as you're going through looking at houses, you're like, okay, all right, if I'm going to occupy one unit, you start going through the motions. I think with anything you do, it's like, all right, I'll occupy this unit, tenant to be here, rents in this neighborhood is X. Okay, so that means if I get X for this unit, I'll have to pay Y. Does that fit in with the money I'm making now? Can I see myself living here? Is it practical? Like, can I get to and from work? And I felt like we looked all over the city. Like, you were taking me places where you knew it would be a no-no, because you knew I wasn't trying to have that 2-hour SEPTA commute. But you was like, no, you're going to go see this, because, it's something you can get from each and every house I feel like you walk into. Like, you walk into one house and you're like, hey, it feels like this thing is leaning. Like, there's a lot of things you come across that unless you get experience, hands-on experience, you'll just never know about. The other thing with budget is what? You had me do an exercise that showed me a lot about where I spend money. You were like, go look through your last 3 months of bank statements and look at what you're spending money on. I was spending an egregious amount of money on food, from like hitting Wawa for breakfast, Wawa for lunch, Grubhub for dinner. You can't live that bachelor lifestyle if you're trying to buy a house. You gotta reel it in. You can't be going to the outlets, even though it's nice. You want to get that drip. You gotta sacrifice all that.
Right. Or wait longer.
Yeah, right. It's like you want to get the house sooner or later. It's really up to you. So I feel like once I did that, I became the cheapest man on the planet. Like, I started making my lunch to work. I started making my own coffee. And then later on, I got a little bit away from that once I got the crib. But, it just shows you, like, if you want to invest in something, like, you can actually cut a lot of things out. Like, there's a lot of unnecessary spending, which I'm sure we're all seeing during this pandemic with everything shut down.
Right,
Like, oh, I
right.
make a lot more money
Oh,
than I thought I did.
oh man, I saved so much money these past 3 months.
Going off a budget, down payment. Everybody always like, yo, Kev, how much do I need for down payment?
So I always tell people, if it's your first time buying a house, you want to have 10,000, and 10,000 is just kind of a ballpark number that helps you with down payment and with your closing costs. So honestly, with first time homebuyer program, your FHA loan, most people are doing 3.5% down payments. That's kind of like the entry level for my first house. And
That's cute. My first house.
yeah, I mean, it's a great way for people to get started. 3.5% down. And even if you're buying a duplex, you can still put 3.5% down, because the thing about the 3.5% down is you have to live in that place for at least 1 year. So if it's a house that you never plan on living in, you can't do 3.5% down. You're going to need about 25% down, maybe 30. So that's a whole lot more cash.
Yeah.
But with 3.5% down, you're really not looking at that much money. Like if you're buying a $200,000 house, that's still only $7,000, and then you're going to need closing costs. So closing costs is like title insurance, mortgage insurance. You're going to need an inspection. There's a laundry list of stuff that goes into closing, but when you get that FHA loan, you can also get what's called seller assist. And that's basically asking the person selling you their house to take some of their profit they're making off of you and giving it right back to you so you can have cash at the closing table to cover the closing costs. So, and usually with first-time home buyers, I'm usually asking for the full amount, which is 6%.
Mm-hmm.
So you get 6% of your purchase price. You're allowed to request from the seller back to you to help you buy your house. So when you include the 6% seller assist and 3.5% down, so that's already more than the down payment that they're allowed to give you back. Mm-hmm. So if you come to the transaction with $10,000, you're usually set, and at least enough to close on a property.
But then you have other things like that can, derail the deal, I guess, like the inspection. Like if something comes back and it's like, oh, the foundation's messed up, you might not want to buy it. So sometimes derailing it isn't a bad thing. It actually might be for the best sometimes.
Yeah,
to walk away.
It might have saved you $25,000 worth of future headaches.
Right. So it's like you don't want to get too attached too early. And that's easier said than done for sure, though.
Right.
But that changes quickly. Because you remember I used to say, like, yeah, I'm never selling this property. Like, this is going to be the one I own till I die. And now I'm just like, nah, man. I mean, if the numbers make sense and I can upgrade that, I'm like, yo, let it go, on to the next.
Yeah, if you can flip it into something bigger and better, let it go. I'm not gonna lie though, I'm sentimentally attached to my first one. I don't think I'm letting that joke go.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like given, and I mean, I'll get there. So, like, you bought yours, and it was, pretty much everything in there was new. So now it's just about maintaining it, and I mean, I feel like that's easy to do. I kind of have the reverse, so I gotta put all the new stuff in there, and I guess once I get to that point, I'm be like, yeah, I can't let this go because I raised a child,
Or you might sell it. You might put all the new stuff in there and say, "Whoa, wait, I can get double back. I spent $35,000 to put new stuff in here, and I can get $100,000 tomorrow. Maybe I just let this go."
Like, how do you, for you personally, what kind of goes into the decision of, hold it, rent it out versus sell? I'm sure you probably got to think about this where your property is from time to time.
Yeah, it would be what I call return on equity, which is basically how much am I making every year off this property right now? And then with that equity amount, what could I buy to do better? So say I bought a house for $100,000 and I'm making, let's say, $1,000 a month. I'm making $12,000 a year on it. And over time, I've been paying it down. Right now, I got $50,000 worth of equity in it, but I'm still paying my $1,000. I'm still getting my $1,000 a month. So $12,000 a year, and I got $50,000 worth of equity. If I would have sold it, I'd get my $50,000 back, and I'd be able to buy something else. If I can buy something else that's going to make significantly more than $12,000 a year, that's when you start thinking about selling.
You talked about equity. Can you walk us through the value of equity? I feel like that's a concept that for when you're new to real estate, sometimes it's hard to wrap your mind around the value that lies in equity in your home.
Okay. So the equity, first, I guess I'll define what the equity is. So the equity is how much the asset that you own is worth minus how much you owe for the loan on it. So just for our example, about 3.5% down. If we buy a $200,000 house and put 3.5% down, we're putting $7,000 worth of money down to buy a $200,000 asset, and we're getting a loan for $193,000. So our equity in that $2,000 piece of property is $7,000. And as you pay your loan down, your equity grows and grows and grows. So if you pay your loan completely off, you owe $0 on that $200,000 house. Your equity will be $200,000.
Right.
And the big thing about equity is really just about the amount of value that your asset is able to bring back to you. So if I have a $200,000 asset and my equity in it is $7,000, if I go around to sell it, I'm going to make $7,000 on a $200,000 asset. That's really not much. But if I hold it till I owe nothing, I sell my the same $200,000 asset. If I sell it when I have 100% equity, which means I have $200,000 worth of equity in it, that means now I've got $200,000 in my pocket. And we're still talking about the same house. So the equity really is where the equity is the value.
You know, in that 30 years, like values could go up, they could stay the same. And then I guess in some cases they can drop. So
I don't like to say 30 years because even though your mortgage is for 30 years, that's if you pay the minimum.
Yeah.
If you decide you want more equity and you want to pay your mortgage off faster, you can just pay more and bring that mortgage down quicker. So you could pay a 30-year mortgage off in 5 years if you put your mind to it. Yeah. So it's really not about the time. It's really about the amount of money you can pour into your asset.
Yeah. One thing that I tell myself, even if it's like if it's anything that I'm kind of hesitating to put money into, I always just remind myself of things I waste money on. Like don't act like you don't spend $20 on a Grubhub order. Don't act like you won't hesitate to buy yourself some new Nikes. Like you waste your money on a lot of things in life when you really take a step back and look at it. So it's like, why not I put this extra $30 to this mortgage payment? And I mean, you know, in that 1 month, you might not see a difference. It might not feel like it's that big of a difference. But when you actually take a step back and say, hey, if I pay a little bit extra each month, I'm going to, accumulate more equity and eventually pay my mortgage off. If it's not 30 years, maybe it's 25. Or maybe if you get super aggressive, it's a 15. Like we were talking recently because I was going through looking at refinancing and it was like, yo, I can do a 15-year and get my rate down to X. And then it's just like, but I don't have as much flexibility. like we're in the midst of a pandemic. Like, fortunately for me, I haven't been negatively affected when it comes to my employment, but let's just say I was. We talk about, your budget. You want to make sure that you're able to afford a mortgage payment if you have a vacancy. Like, if
Right.
a tenant isn't there, it's all on you. So you got to be
Banks
ready.
don't want their money.
Yeah, they still gonna be knocking. It doesn't stop just because you don't have someone in there. That's something important to kind of think about. So you can always get that 30-year and just pay it like a 15 if you want. Like, it's the
Exactly.
same
And
thing.
that's what I always tell people. If you're an investor, I don't see any reason to get a 15-year mortgage on a house you're going to rent out, because that just means that's just the cash flow difference between the rent you're getting in and the mortgage you got to pay out is just going to be higher every month. Whereas if you do the 30-year, that's the least amount of monthly payment you're going to be able to get. And if you got extra and you want to pay it down, then you decide. And no one's counting on you to pay it.
Yeah.
That's just something you hold yourself accountable to. And if you don't got it that 1 month, then you don't got it. You just hit the minimum.
Yeah, I think some people get sucked into, how much you save in interest.
Right. You save the
And
same amount if you put
pay it.
yourself on it.
Yeah. And you have less penalties if, you have a 3-month shutdown or whatever it is.
Exactly.
You said something the other day that I thought was a great thing. It's, people don't realize, or I'll let you say it.
Oh, yeah. I said people don't realize that they can get money out of their house without selling it. So that that goes back to the equity conversation. Once you have equity into your house, now banks are willing to loan you money. The same way as if when you're first trying to buy a house, the bank's willing to loan you money. When you own the house and have equity in it, the bank will come back and give you another loan. And that's usually, you can do it 2 ways. You can do a refinance, which is when you take your old mortgage and get a new loan that buys out that old mortgage and lends a new one on top of it. Or you could get a home equity line of credit or a home equity loan, which means you keep your old mortgage in place and another bank comes in with a second mortgage that loans you money on how much equity you have in your house currently. It'll be smaller than your principal usually, than your first one. And they'll just give you the amount for what you want of that piece of your equity.
What can I do with that money? Like, do I have to put it back into my house? Like, do I have to use it for,
You can do whatever
renovations?
You can do whatever you want with it. If the bank gives you a refinance based on your equity, that means they're holding you accountable based on the house that you already have. So they don't really care what you do with it. As long as you pay them, you do whatever you want with it. Now, a smart investor is going to buy another house with it, or at least some kind of asset, put it into a business, something where that new monthly payment can get paid with whatever you spent your money on.
And ideally kick you off a little extra.
Right, and hopefully kick you off a little extra. And so the way refinances work is that typically, at least nowadays, these rules change all the time, but typically a bank is going to lend you on 75% of the home's value. Mm-hmm. So let's go back to my example. If you do your 3.5% down on a $200,000 house, you owe $193. You have $7,000 worth of equity. A bank's going to lend you 75% of the home's value. So that means they'll lend you $150,000. Well, your old mortgage is worth $193 right now, so you're not going to be able to do much with that.
Yeah, no.
But that's where the equity conversation comes back in, though. So if you're paying your mortgage off, and say you get it down to 100, and the bank's willing to lend you 150, now you can go get a refinance, pay off your $100,000 mortgage, and they'll give you $50,000 on top of it. That's just a wire right into your bank account to do whatever you want with it. And you just have a new 30-year mortgage to pay them, whoever this new person, the new bank is. and you start all over.
So that was kind of my goal starting out. Like, yeah, you know, I'm paying my mortgage off for a few years, then I'm gonna refi, and you know, I'm gonna get a cash out, then I'm gonna take that, and that's gonna be my next down payment. Didn't quite
Yeah.
pan out like that for me. Although I would say that I'm still in a good spot. So I'm in the process of refinancing my mortgage because one thing that I learned is that FHA loan is a bit more expensive. You know, you're paying that mortgage insurance every month, which I think for me was like an extra $120, and that adds up quick. So it's like if you can refinance to a conventional mortgage, you can really start to save yourself some money on a monthly basis. And so in order to do that, I had to, like you said, I had to go from having 3.5% equity to like 25%. And I mean, it comes organically just by making your payments. And then you also look at the timing. Like we're in an environment right now where rates are super low. Like when I tell
Right.
people the rate I'm about to get this 2.875, they're like, "What?" Like I haven't heard of that since
That's
whenever. Like
great. I
so
need
it's,
that.
you know, you kind of weigh out options to get there. Like, you know, I think I bought a point or two up front. So, you know, you pay an extra, you know, 1% or 2%, and it all rolls into the loan. So it's not like I got to come out of pocket at the closing table. So for me, I'm like, all right, whatever. Then he's like, hey, listen, if you pay, you know, I was at like 3 and change if I bought, you know, 1 or 2 points. He's like, listen, if you pay another $140, I can get it down to 2.875. And I'm just like, why not? You know, you think about it, it knocks my payment down about $200. It's like, all right, there's that right
Yeah.
there in 1 month. And then, you know, you
You
think
get
about
that
the,
140 back in savings
yeah,
payment.
right. And so then it's like, you know, the 1 or 2% you pay up front, you know, you just think about, all right, maybe like a year and a half, I'll make that back. And so then, you know, you're saving $200 a month, and you start saving that up, and like, all right, now that's money for renovations, reserves, even my next property. So you
Mhm.
can kind of get creative from there. So like at first I was a little, you know, down because I'm like, shoot, I thought I was going to be able to get some type of cash out, even if it was a small amount. But, you know, I wasn't thinking about closing costs and things like that that can kind of erode some of that value. So it doesn't make sense in that scenario.
Right.
So I would say, you know, sometimes
Which
with
is
real estate,
fine because you $200 every month is still,
yeah,
it's not cash out at the same time, but it's
yeah,
it's a
you
little
save it.
trickle single month for
Yeah, if
the
you,
next 30 years.
yeah, if you don't go to the outlets, you'll be
Right.
fine. You just,
Right. As long as you're watching that $200 and it's going to something effective, then you still win it.
I like what you said to me because I was like, you know, what's the best thing? Like trying to figure out the best thing to do with that extra money each month. It's like, all right, should this just go to my pocket? And then you were like, you know, your house stuff kind of stays your house stuff. So,
Yeah, the way I run my rental property is I have it run, it pays for its own finances. So on a month where nothing's wrong, everyone pays on time, I don't have any extra repairs or anything, I'm usually making about $750 after paying all the bills and everything. So at no point do I take that $750 and spend it on anything, really. I let it sit in the account and let it build up over time, because what people always tend to forget that your house is constantly falling apart.
yeah,
I don't care if you got a house built yesterday. You might be able to go 2 years and something's going to go wrong. And that, if you're lucky. But in general, your house is always falling apart. So I kind of keep the rental property as if it's its own entity. I don't take money from it, and very rarely does it take money from me. So if we have 3 good months or so, I'm up to almost $2,100. So now I can afford if the roof needs to get fixed or the heater goes out in the middle of December, because those are the kinds of things where if you don't prepare for that,
hmm,
you're going to be in trouble, because it's one thing for you to live with something wrong in your own house. It's like, you know what, I'll get to it when I get to it. You cannot have your tenants living like that in your house, because that's your responsibility. They're paying you every month for a service, and that's to provide them quality housing. So if you can't do that, you're going to be out of tenants, and then now no one's going to be paying you.
Right.
So it's really just about discipline, keeping the investment money for investments, and letting it take care of itself organically. And that way, it's not really a burden on you, and it's not really a burden on your budget when you have to call a maintenance man or a repairman, and you got to pay whatever comes up.
People always ask me, it's like, so what do you do when something needs to be fixed? And it's like, all right, I know a couple handymen. Sometimes you got to pay, you got to get a contractor in there, a roofer or someone that has to come out and do it. And like you said, you got to have money saved up in case things happen, because you never expect it. Like, you remember, like 2 weeks after I bought my house, I had a junkie.
Leak.
Do you remember what caused the leak?
No, not specifically.
All right. So, I bought my house on the outskirts of development. You got a little bit of everything in the neighborhood. So I had a drug addict break into the basement. Remember, like, that window, like somehow he scoped it out. He was like, he knew he can get in. So he jumped in there, broke the copper pipe, jumped out. I had a flooded basement. Meanwhile, I'm down in Maryland. Like, this is like 2 weeks after I closed. And I'm just like, yo, this is supposed to be a walk in the park. Like, this, like,
it's never a walk in the park.
We didn't talk about this happening. We talked about things breaking, just by being worn out. We didn't talk about an event like this. So luckily, like, through, like, my stepdad's a realtor. He has a lot of friends. And so I was able to get somebody in there to fix the pipe. Even though that was a headache because it was a unique part, of course. Then I had to get another handyman to put, little bars on the basement windows, which I noticed everybody on the block had except me. So, so when you're looking in, at buying a house, pay attention to the other houses and what they have and what they don't have, because sometimes, just got to put little deterrents in place. So do you think that, you can tell me this better, because I guess when I bought my house, I was still in a training program at work, so I wasn't making as much money as I was making now. So things were kind of tight that first year. And it's weird because I forgot that, like, yo, you're banking on this, getting out this training program, getting promoted, making more money. So for like the first year, I was just like,
stressed.
I don't know how, like, why did I get into this? Like, I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck. But, like,
you probably were.
Yeah. I was like, no, I graduated from a pretty good school. Like, I thought I had a good job, but, like, I feel like I'm broke. But then I got promoted, started making some more money and things. I got a little bit more flexibility to kind of save, to eventually buy another property. And, like, now that I'm refinancing and my mortgage payment is going to be a little bit lower, usually what I have happen is with each pay, I have, let's say my mortgage payment, like, I have the first 50% come out of pay one and the second 50% come out of pay two, and they automatically goes to the house account. I'm not changing that percentage. So I'm still going to be putting money in that account as if, my mortgage payment is where it is today. So that'll help me save more, build reserves, because I also made, my rent for my tenant is probably a little bit under market. Like, I can definitely get more. And the reason I did that was because at the time, living paycheck to paycheck, I was like, I don't really want a vacancy. I don't want to miss a month. So I priced it where I knew I would get people in there. And once I got someone in there, I could have increased it after a year, and I did. But hindsight is 2020. I was like, damn, I could have increased it some more. But I also don't want to just, like, have my tenant feel like I'm nickel and diming them. Next time I increase it, it's going to be at the level that I think is worth. And, you look at other things as a landlord, like, do you have a good tenant? Because you can have a tenant that costs you a lot of headaches. And so you got to, figure out what you value. Do you want to get, a couple extra bucks each month, which, I mean, it's not like you're getting an extra $500 a month. Like, you might get an extra 50, 100 or so. And it's just like, is that worth, what could come with someone that, tears your stuff up, doesn't fix anything, the little things, and just, you know, is calling you 2 o'clock in the morning for something that can't get fixed until the next day anyway. So
Right.
things to think about when you're a landlord. I know you save money, like, you know, let's say you have that 700 after all your expenses, after you pay your mortgage. Do you think that will ever accumulate to a level where, you know, you could use it for a down payment on another property, or no, because like you say, your house is always kind of falling apart, so eventually something is tapping that account?
Hopefully, eventually it gets up. It's just takes like a hot streak, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
gotta have something. Like I was going pretty well, and then I had to drop $4,500 on a new retaining wall on my back. So my backs up to the alleyway, the like common alleyway,
Mm-hmm.
and that wall was caving in, and I got an L&I violation saying it was a safety hazard, and I thought it was BS until I went down there and said, "Oh, damn, this joint about to fall."
Did someone like report it? And like, how did
Yeah,
L&I get involved?
yeah. My neighbor said the wall was actually pulling part of his wall. Like, so my entire wall was about to fall down, and about like 8 feet of his was getting pulled down. It was clearly my
Oh,
walls.
wow.
So he reported. He had called me about it like 6 months ago, and 6 months ago it didn't look that bad.
Oh, so you just, you just like, ain't nothing wrong with it. He just
Yeah,
being a pain.
I kind of forgot about it, and then I got L&I report, and it was bad. So
Then you fixed it.
then I fixed it. I fixed it for real, and that took about all my money. I think that actually did dig into my regular pocket a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but then that was just in March. So I'm thinking after I do a big expense, I hope, all right, here comes my hot streak. Here comes
Right.
my
Right. Law of averages.
right.
Like, you do up. And like, I think, you know, something I tell friends when they ask me like about funding it, like, I want to get to the point where, like, I mean, now you're not in half, you're not in one unit, you know, they're both, you know, it's running on its own. Like, I want to get to that point to where, you know, that account, I don't have to touch it. It does its own thing. Like, my paycheck from my 9 to 5 doesn't have to contribute to that whatsoever unless something, you know, drastic happens. You know, right now I'm in a position where, you know, I am the house account almost. Like, I have a separate account for it, but, you know, more often than not, when
You got put into it.
you know, there's a repair, it's coming from my personal account, which is fine. I think the biggest thing is just having a plan for like, how are you going to get it from being like that? So for me, I'm going with the burr strategy, right? And I feel like I'm a little bit behind it, but I got to remind myself, like, yo, Kev, you bought the house and put yourself in a position where you were living paycheck to paycheck strategically, but now you're not. So now I'm at a point where I'm actually accumulating savings, and so I'm going to put money into my unit so I can rent it out at a decent amount and then get out of there, and then hopefully it's running on its own. Not hopefully, I mean it will be.
It will be. Yeah, so BIRD just stands for buy, rehab, refinance, repeat. So the whole idea is to buy a house that needs work, something that needs to be rehab, so you're not paying top dollar. And then you save up the money, rehab it yourself, or hire people to rehab it enough that you increase the value so that you have enough equity that when you refinance, you come out with enough money to repeat on the next property.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's a good, easy strategy.
Yeah, that's the strategy, and it's easier to do when you're not paying 3.5% down. If you start with a house that you put 30% down on, you're not waiting that long.
Right.
When you're doing 3.5% down, that's why people's first house usually takes the longest.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, FHA is a great product because, like, hey, you don't have to bring a lot to the table, but, you know, to really start seeing the benefits, it takes a lot more time, or it takes for you to say, hey, I'm putting more money in. I'm gonna cut out some of my fun money, and I'm gonna put it into this asset that I have so that I can really start to make some moves in real estate. And so, you know, you kind of gotta pick what you want.
It gives you the opportunity. It's like, if I had to wait for 30% for the house I have, my first house, I wasn't going to be able to pay no $199 for it. By the time I had 30% down, I would have had to pay like $250, $270. Yeah. So I would have had to wait anyway. So I'd rather wait while it's mine than the other way around.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, kind of going along with the refinancing piece, like you got to get that appraisal because, it's a new loan. Bank wants to ensure like, hey, this is how much it's worth so that, they can be at a good loan to value on their money. Just in case, someone happens to not pay, because that does happen. I'm a lender, so I've seen it. You gotta.
I always forget you're on the other side.
Yeah, you gotta transfer them over to that workout group. That's not fun, and it's not fun when you have your, you gotta sit in meetings with, and like these aren't loans that I did. There's like I inherited my book because I'm new to it. But when I got to sit down with the credit team and kind of walk them through what happened, like those aren't fun conversations.
What happened was
like, business just wasn't booming, and it's unfortunate, but over the next year and a half or 6 months to a year, we're probably going to experience that, given what's going on right now. So rough time. So that's what I'm telling all my friends too. I'm like, listen, it's a pandemic going on. You kind of got to keep that in the back of your mind when you're looking. Also think about job security, because if like if your tenant, like I know I'm fine, but for now, that could change.
Right.
But also like my tenant, if they're having some trouble, that money isn't coming in. So again, I got to be able to float that. Mm-hmm. And God forbid I lose my job. It's going to be like, all right, how am I going to pay for this? Because if I'm not paying the banks, they taking the house. They like, this is mine now. Okay, it was a good run. I'm sorry it has to be this way. But you signed that promissory note. But what I wanted to say with refinancing, and you got to get that appraisal. You pit me down with something to help your appraiser or help you out from an appraisal standpoint of some things you can do, simple things you can do to help increase the value of your property or get what your property is worth.
Yeah, so I literally just found this out like 2 months ago. So this was even news to me. I was listening to a podcast and an appraiser was on and they gave some tips. So the first thing you want to do is clean your house. If you're getting an appraisal, clean your house. Like it's not supposed to affect appraisals, but it does because they're human beings. Like you walk in, the house smells good, it looks clean. It's the same way as when you're trying to sell it to somebody who's trying. If you want to put it on the market for a buyer, you're going to clean it because you want people to feel good in it. Same thing with an appraisal. So that's number one. Number two is give the appraiser comps that will justify the price you want. So a comp is comparable sales in the area. So I have access to it because I got my real estate license, but any realtor can run comps for your house for you, and just see where the best comps within like less than half a mile around you come in at, and give him those. Give him or her the best comps, and that should be about what you're shooting for. So if you can find houses that are around the same size as your house, close to your house, that are kind of built the same way, and they're coming in at a good, decent price, get 2 or 3 of them, and pick a number in between the highest and the lowest of the ones that you hand your appraiser and say, here, I think my house is worth about this much, and show them why. And keep a tally of all the work you've done. Oh
yeah, that's important.
So yes, you want to let the appraiser know that you've been taking care of it and that some work has happened. So you just want to itemize. If you have the receipts are the best. But if not, just itemize and tell them all the work you've done in the house and how much it costs you, so that helps them when they're writing up their appraisal. They can put that as the value added to the properties when they're trying to give you the number you want. So if you have a tally of all the work you've done, that can kind of help boost you, even if your house doesn't quite line up with the comps that you gave them. They can use those comps plus the work you've done to kind of justify a higher number than they might have given you otherwise.
Yeah, and I think just from a pure presentation standpoint, it sends the right message to the appraisers. Like,
right. You look like someone that cares.
Yeah, right. Like, don't, like, you know me. I love wearing t-shirts, sweatpants, my Nikes, and a hat. You know, since I'm working from home, this has been the ideal for Kev's wardrobe. Although I love wearing suits too, but more comfortable, easy to do. Appraisal day, I got dressed. Like, nothing major, just, you know, nice pants, little golf shirt. Have my little pin golf shirt on, hat, put the class ring on, because presentation goes a long way. And then, you know, I was printing out my comps, and I didn't switch it to black and white. Came out in color. Then I was like, you know what? This looks a lot better anyway. So it's like the little things. Like, make sure you go buy those wall plugins so that it's smelling good. Like, all the little things go a long way, and, you know, it worked. I got the value I was looking for.
Good.
What do you think? I only got a couple more questions for you. I know you're a busy man. You probably got to go, you know, think about your next move.
I cleared the night out. I know you like to talk.
Man, I'm always trying to learn. Like, are there any mistakes that you think you've made since you started investing in real estate? Like, I know for me, it was like, you know, undervaluing my rental rates a little bit.
I made mad mistakes. First mistake, like I told you before, was buying a fully renovated, fixed up house, where if I would have looked harder, I probably could have bought something at that same time for like $140 and fixed it up over time, spent $40,000 or $30,000 even to get it to the condition of the house I bought into. And now with the values going up the way they did in my neighborhood, I would have been sitting even in a better position. But that's one. Number two, I kept the tenants in there that, like my tenants when I moved into that house had been there longer than I had. And they were major drug dealers.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, they were selling mad drugs. So they paid on time, but I had traffic in and out. And then when I finally kicked them out, I had never even seen the condition of their unit when I got it, because like I told you, I was trying to get out. So it took a solid 3 weeks of cleaning every day to get the cigarette smell out.
Are you serious?
Oh, it was bad, bro.
You did it yourself?
We did what I could, because a lot of it was just straight cleaning. So
yeah,
like, I didn't.
So there's no sense in paying.
Right, it's just work. Really, yeah. There was some stuff they had broken some stuff. Like I think the washing machine was completely broke. I think the toilet had a crazy leak in it. But that could happen at any time.
Right.
But the filth and the dirt are not checking on them, and never even looking, just like waving as they came home. I paid for that. Yeah. That was a solid month of cleaning every single day.
Oh my God. Yeah. So do your walkthroughs. Like,
do the walkthroughs.
That's like, even if you don't even have to have a reason. Like, you put it in your lease that as long as you give notice, you know, you can do a walkthrough to check on things, or shoot, if you have to, make something up. Like, hey, I'm just looking to make sure everything's working. I'm gonna come through there tomorrow afternoon, and just so you check everything. Like,
I do both. So I have it in the lease that I check. I can check every 6 months. I reserve the right to check every 6 months, but I never pull it, because there's always, like, if the exterminator wants to go in there, it's like, oh, you saw a mouse, right? All right, I'm gonna come let the exterminator in,
and then just walk through the whole joint. Like,
just do a little check, check. You only have to be in there for 6 seconds to tell if they're smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, like if there's a hole in the wall, like
If there's a
you'll
hole in
see
the wall,
it.
exactly.
Like you
Just
don't.
like, by the way, I gotta let the exterminator in, so I'll be through there, and just kind of just keeping an eye on things.
What is like the biggest advice you can give to someone looking to, enter into investing in real estate, and what are some of the resources that you use to learn more about real estate?
My advice is buy some. Just get started because it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah,
You learn on the way. You learn on the way, and as you're learning, you're getting equity. So that's the biggest thing. You're never going to get any equity renting. So just jump in. Like I said, the house is always falling apart. So you're not going to be. You can know everything in the world. You're still going to have to fix it. And as for resources, I learned a lot on biggerpockets.com. That's like a social network for real estate investors, and there's all kinds of people on there. New people doing it 40 years. There's investors, agents, appraisers, everybody. And it's got its own podcast. It's got like almost 400 episodes. So I learned a lot being on Bigger Pockets. Reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad just for mindset. And just really actually going to real estate investment meetups too.
I was going to ask if you did that.
Yeah, I did do that. I haven't gone as frequently now with the virus.
I'll wait till we get that vaccine and then.
Yeah, I wish I was doing it more like last year, because now I didn't know it was going to be 5 months with no face to face. But when outside opens back up, real estate investor meetups, which I'm sure people who don't know about real estate investing probably didn't even know that's a thing. But Philly has a good amount of them, and they're all over. Every state in the country has their own local meetups where people investing in real estate just meet up and talk real estate, because people are always trying to buy, sell, and do deals, and it's really a small group of people that are doing it locally. So that's a great way, and then you can just pick people's brains about how they get started, what they're doing, how just kind of the tricks of the individual, like L&I and going through zoning, all these little things that you don't really think of until you start buying your own houses. But yeah, that's basically it, and just doing it.
Yeah, I think.
I know. I meant to say this. I never answered your question about how did I find like handyman and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Years ago it was Angie's List. Now it's Home Advisor. I literally just go on these like websites and just put the project I need in, get quotes, and just try people out. Mm-hmm. If the price is good and the quality of work is good, now I have somebody in my phone that I can keep coming back to. And if it's not good, I just try again next time.
Yeah. And like the one I used recently was Thumbtack. That's Thumbtack. Another one.
Yep.
But like, yeah, I have the Thumbtack and Home Advisor apps on my phone. But yeah, man, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Like I said, I know you're a busy man. You're out here saving the world, one young brother at a time.
I don't know about saving the world.
Nah, I mean, definitely. No, I feel like you make a difference, though.
Thank you.
Even from just being a basketball coach, and like, I guess probably the reason I coach beyond loving basketball is kind of was like passing the torch. It's like you and Dev have been there. We always kind of looked up to y'all as older brothers, and now I'm in that same position, and it's weird because there's like things I used to do to y'all that like kids do to me, and it's just like, you guys are stupid. But you get to pour into them, and have conversations like this. So if we're not present, if we're not actively involved, then they don't get this knowledge. So you're saving the world, even if it's just one person's world.
I appreciate it. I guess that's all that counts, right?
Yeah.
It only takes one.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
No,
But
thanks for too.
yeah, no
You know,
doubt.
I could talk real estate all day, so
Yeah, no, that's why I got to cut it because I can keep going too. But I mean, we'll have you back just because there's a lot more things that we can discuss, whether it's wholesaling, even if it's talking about plans to go from a 2-unit property to a 50-unit property. How you do that, whether it's partnering on deals, auctions. The list goes on. You'll be back.
I'll be back.
Love you, and keep being you.
All right, I love you too, and good luck. Good luck with your show, man. I hope this blows up.
Thanks, man. Share it.
Will do.
Put it on your story. I'm gonna be checking.
I know you will.
All right, bro.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.